eyes, lungs, pancreas. So many snacks, so little time.
The world has enough superheroes. How's it going, everybody? Kiyakahi Matsumoto here, presenting to you all my honest review of Venom. Now, before I get into this first question of the video, what were your thoughts on this new origin story to the Lethal Protector? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Or are you relatively new to the character and have no real opinion whatsoever? So, to summarize, while this was far from a perfect film, it was still quite enjoyable, and it was not as bad as most critics were making it out to be. Although I have to admit I would be lying if I said that there weren't things for improvement, but I personally feel that Sony played the hand they were dealt as best they could, from a legal standpoint. Tom Hardy stars as Eddie Brock, an investigative reporter who is also dating District Attorney Anne Weying, who is portrayed in the movie by Michelle Williams. Riz Ahmed portrays Carlton Drake, the leader and CEO of the Life Foundation, a survivalist company that seeks to prolong and extend human existence on Earth. Also part of the film's primary cast are Scott Hayes as Roland Treese, Drake's head of security, Reed Scott as Dr. Dan Lewis, and Jenny Slate as Dr. Dora Skirth, a scientist who works for Drake who disagrees with his inhumane and unethical methods. So Eddie investigates the Life Foundation after some encouraging / pleading from Dr. Skirth, and he breaks in and out of the company. After he does so, he realizes that he has been mentally and physically fused with a living black sentient ooze known as a symbiote. The symbiote gives Eddie superhuman abilities and allows him to heal from almost any injury, while in return being able to live on Earth itself. Carlton Drake keeps finding more hosts for the other symbiotes he found to bond with, as he sees humankind on the brink of extinction, and he wants to prolong human existence on Earth by merging man and symbiote to create a higher life form. The only problem is, the symbiotes work in a way that are like an organ transplant. The host body has to be a perfect match. If it's not, the host body will reject the symbiote, instantly killing the host, and the symbiote will also slowly die itself. Eddie and his symbiote, which calls itself Venom, forge an unlikely alliance to evade capture by Carlton Drake and his army, primarily because Drake wants his property back, but also to prevent the arrival of even more of the symbiote's kind on Earth, ultimately facing off against an even more powerful symbiote going by the name of Riot. Now, the good of this film is the action sequences are decent, the portrayal of Venom, both visually and verbally, are almost spot on. I mean, it's not quite there yet, but it's pretty close, and much closer to what he should be than how Topher Grace portrayed him in Spider-Man 3. Nobody wants to talk about that one. The acting, for the most part, is very well done. The special effects are decent, and the plot isn't half bad. The interactions between Eddie and the symbiote are also very well done. Tom Hardy's portrayal of Eddie freaking out when he doesn't know why his body is being controlled, along with the symbiote in his head and him acting like a lunatic because of it, was done excellently. Michelle Williams and Reed Scott also have the best acting performances in the film, and I surprisingly found out that Scott was the most natural feeling out of all of them. I also particularly enjoyed that while this film leaned more along the lines of a thriller, it did have plenty of laugh-out-loud moments, although not to an obnoxious extent like, say, Thor Ragnarok, for example. That would have just killed the vibe for me instantly. Now, here's what I felt was mediocre or bad about the film. The first complaint I had was that some of Venom's one-liners and quips in the film didn't really feel like something the character would say. It felt very out of character for him. And Tom Hardy's portrayal of how Eddie normally acts without the symbiote and his interactions with other people also felt a little bit over-exaggerated at times. And the same goes for Carlton Drake, who is portrayed by Riz Ahmed, as previously stated. Carlton Drake and Riot both never really felt fleshed out as villains and antagonists, and I really was not crazy about the way Riot looked. His design to me was just, I didn't like it. The final fight was also very visually confusing and felt a bit weird, and here's why I say this. The darker background combined with two darker colored characters fighting each other, along with a few oddly placed camera angles, and the fact that the two symbiotes do on occasion quite literally begin to blend in with each other, makes it hard for me to keep track of the combat and figure out who's doing what. And my eyes are at 2018, okay? The soundtrack honestly was nothing special, and some of the dialogue between the characters and their interactions honestly felt cheesy and made me cringe a little. Last thing to nitpick at was there never was an explanation as to how each individual symbiote got their names. In the source material, Eddie called the merging of himself and the symbiote Venom because that's what he was being paid to spew from the tabloids he worked at. All in all, I have to admit, this one was not as bad as critics are making it out to be. At the time I did my written review and posted that on my Facebook page, and when me and my friend Laneki went to the premiere, it was a 30% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and it was not that bad. And while this was far from a perfect film, it was still an enjoyable one, especially for those who are fans of the character of Venom, and I personally feel that Sony did the best they could with the hand they were legally dealt. So I give this one a 6.5 out of 10. I mean, even though it pains me to do that, I personally would have given it a 7.5 out of 10 based on personal enjoyment, but that's not how I score things. I do everything numerically. So if, for example, I do things based on how many things I find wrong with the film. Every little thing I find wrong with the film, I deduct half a point on a scale of 1 to 10. So that way it keeps me as unbiased as I possibly can be. I mean, it's impossible to fully eliminate bias, but it just keeps me in check, so to speak. So, good effort to director Ruben Fleischer and everyone involved. So, that's it for my honest review of Venom. I hope this answers any and all questions you may have. If not, feel free to shoot me a comment down below. And again, you don't have to agree with my opinions. You just have to know what I saw and observed. But anyways, thank you so much for watching. I hope this answers any and all questions you may have. If not, please feel free to shoot me a comment down below. And hopefully, I will see you all in my review for Aquaman. Anyway, have a great day or evening, depending on what time zone you're in. Stay safe. Good night, everybody.